Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back for another episode. This is Frank Agin, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Thank you for tuning into the Networking RX podcast. For those of you who have been with the show for a while, subscribed, or just a consistent listener, you know from time to time I will have guests on. Great and awesome people talking about professional relationships and business networking, and today is certainly one of those days. Today I have on with me David Burkus. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you got it.
All right. David is he's a researcher and communicator, and he is shaping the minds of future businesses. He's a best-selling author of 3 books. The one that I was kind of referred to, we'll touch on a little bit, is Friend of a Friend, and explores the science of how networks and relationships drive business. Both inside and outside the organization. I look at organization as everyone's got an organization because we all have a network, and that's kind of an informal network. But he blends current research in psychology, sociology, economics, network science, and really kind of provides a fresh perspective on how to improve your networks and build those key connections. His books have been translated into a dozen languages. I didn't know there were a dozen languages. And he's got some TED Talks out there with over 2 million views. I watched one in leading up to this in preparation for the program. But you'll find the conversation interesting because this is not his opinion. This is cold hard fact. These are researchers out there doing this, and he's kind of compiled a lot of this stuff and brings it to the audience in a very practical way. You can, if you do a search, you'll find that he's got writings out there that appear in the Wall Street Journal, Harvard Business Review, USA Today, Fast Company, and others. And he's been on NPR, the BBC, CNN, CBS Morning News. David, welcome to the program. It's great to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, well, part of the fun of being an author is learning how many languages a book can get translated into. So there you go. Now,
did they come to you and say, "Hey, can we do this in Swahili?" Or is it just you sign a blanket, go for it?
So it happens in 2 different ways, and the second way is way more interesting. The first is your publisher publishes the book in English in North America, and then usually reaches out to a lot of places. I mean, you can count on, if you're working with a traditional publisher, a Chinese language edition, a Japanese language edition. Those markets are just so big. Right. But what the other thing that's really fun is after it's out for a while, you start to get inbound inquiries. So, for example, later in 2020, I'm speaking in Vilnius, Lithuania, and the conference wanted to create an edition in Lithuanian. I didn't know that was a language.
Okay.
Right? So those are kind of more fun because I've never had somebody say, I just read your book and I'd love to translate it into Swahili. But yeah, occasionally you get people who find it in English and then reach out to us. And that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I guess my first question is, or the question much of the audience will have is, how did you get going in this? How do you have an interest in this? That would be a good place for us to start.
Yeah. So my dirty little secret is that I've wanted to be a writer since I was like 14 years old. And when you are 14, you're thinking you're going to be a fiction writer, right? And so I went to university, I went to undergrad to study English and creative writing. And in that time found sort of the very first popular science writers. So like Malcolm Gladwell's essays in the New Yorker. I don't even think his first book was out at this point. And people who were saying, wow, you're diving into the research, but you're not boring the way my textbooks are. You're blending storytelling and the science and prescription. And I was fascinated with that. And so I went to graduate school to study organizational psychology with that intent. of being a writer one day. Now, the funny thing that happens as soon as you commit to any graduate program in just about anything is you're suddenly on the academic track. And so I ended up spending 6 years as a full-time business school professor after I graduated with a doctorate. But again, the goal was always sort of writing. And in particular, a friend of a friend, when you teach in a business school, you see that the problem that you spoke to earlier, which is most of the advice that your business students are picking up on how to network their way into their job is conjecture. It's the way that I always say it, I stole this from Austin Kleon, is that advice is autobiographical. All advice is somebody else's story about what worked for them. Well, I'm trained as a researcher now. Advice is a sample size of one. I want sample sizes of thousands, right? Or tens of thousands. And so that led me to reading a lot of different network science studies, some of which are in the popular imagination, like strength of weak ties studies and 6 degrees of separation, but some are not. There's a lot of things about the way that humans connect and interact and form clusters and organizations that hasn't bridged over into that popular press area. And as a result, people just end up reading these advice books, then go try and apply that advice at a networking event or a conference, and then complain, oh, I feel so sleazy and inauthentic. Well, no wonder, because you're pretending to be someone else when you're trying to apply that person's advice. I'd rather say, here's what the science says. You design a networking strategy that's unique to you and works for you.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I mean, there's nothing wrong with people giving their opinions. They work hard, and there's certainly some validity to it. But it's a sample size of one, as you said. But they're always leaving little things out. You know, hey, I did this and it worked. Okay, it could have been the right day, right time, wearing the right suit, approaching the right person, and it worked. And your day is totally different, and you don't have all the variables. So, but I watched the I keep saying podcast. I watched the TED Talk, the one you did with the University of Nevada. In fact, I recently just shared it on LinkedIn and Facebook and recommended it to other people. But you talk about 3 ideas in there I really would want to kind of touch on. The first was connecting with old friends, and I think the term you used for it was dormant ties. Is that correct?
Yep.
You want to talk on that? That would be great. We'll kind of work through these.
Yeah. So if you're a sort of a networking junkie like we are, and you've read the advice books and all that sort of stuff, you're probably familiar with the strength of weak ties studies. But where we are in the research around this phenomenon right now is the most powerful form of a weak tie is what we call a dormant tie. Somebody you know, but you haven't talked to in a while. Maybe you had a close relationship working together, or you lived near each other and then one of you moved, something like that. I mean, relationships fall by the wayside sometimes, right? Yeah. And what's amazing is how much power can be unlocked when you reconnect with those, because similar to strangers, I mean, the reason people go to networking events, the reason they go to conferences, the reason they try and meet new people is that new people have access to new information, new potential introductions or referrals, even sometimes just new ways of seeing the world that educate you, right? So there's some value in that. If you just hang out with the same 5 people all the time, eventually 4 of them become unnecessary because you all think alike, right? And that's a problem. Dormant ties are this sort of happy medium where there's not nearly as much awkwardness of trying to build rapport with a total stranger. You have rapport with them. They're old friends, right? But because they haven't just been they haven't been cryogenically frozen while you haven't talked to them, right? They're not like Han Solo. That's what I was grasping for, locked in frozen carbonite. They're out there. They're interacting with other people. So they're making those same connections that strangers are making. And so, we sort of know this because you'll see it, like if you're looking for a job, one of the pieces of advice you get all the time is reaching back out to former colleagues at past jobs, et cetera. But that's really, in a lot of cases, too late, because then it can get really awkward, right? Because now you need something from them, and people can sort of smell that desperation on you and think, no, this is the real reason. They don't actually care about me. So what I like to encourage people to do is develop a system where you're regularly checking back in with those people, even if it's just light touches like text messages or phone calls that say, I was thinking about you, I hope you're well. Those can go a really long way in resetting what I often call now the clock of awkwardness, right? Just there's a stopwatch that every interaction, once you're done interacting with somebody, the stopwatch starts, and just the longer it goes, the more awkward it gets before you got to reach back out to them. And so the goal is to develop that system of reaching back out to them regularly, because you have, you have no idea how much value could be unlocked in that check-in conversation. But what you want is that if they needed something from you or you needed something from them, it's just another conversation I have every once in a while with my old friend.
Yeah, no, that's good. A couple thoughts. And I have a friend who occasionally will be displaced, and he makes. I feel for him. I don't want to say no to him. I feel bad, but it's like, hey, I haven't talked to you in 5 years. I need to do a better job of keeping up, but I need some connections.
Yeah.
But people do get hung up with the dormant ties because, in their mind, it's as they do think people are frozen in time. Like, oh my God, Bert, he was the fraternity drunk. Well,
Right.
he took over his dad's business. He's a millionaire now.
Yeah.
He didn't stay in place. He's still not mixing punch and vodka in a garbage can. True story. But anyhow, so reconnecting with old friends. And the other thing you talked about was make your work friends real friends.
Yeah. So we have a tendency to, like you said, to kind of put people in a bucket and keep them there forever, right? Like they're frozen in time. But the other thing is we have a tendency to put people in just one bucket, right? So however we meet somebody, the context that we meet them in, we just kind of label them as that. They're a work friend, right? They're a fellow accountant, or they're a personal friend. We both play golf or do some hobby, or they're a church friend, or our kids go to school. We put whatever label we want on it. And then we take this mental shortcut of always thinking of our interactions with them just in that label. Well, that's not how networks work. That used to be how the people that studied networks studied it for a long time. Was just if you knew somebody, they would draw a single line between you two as two different nodes in the network. And then they realized they had to graphically represent these different contexts for connection. Sometimes you work with people and your kids go to school together and you both like golf, right? So there are multiple different things that you could talk about, ways that you connect, communities that you're a part of. So they started drawing multiple lines between multiple nodes in the network and started labeling that multiplexity. Now it got really interesting because we find that opportunity and information doesn't respect the labels that you put on people. So work friends turn into business opportunities and vice versa. We're actually, business history is full of personal connection people who then went into business together, right? Ben and Jerry were the two slowest, fattest kids in high school who always loved food. That's probably why they were the slowest, fattest kids. And they would talk as they would walk laps while everybody else ran laps. And then they went off to college separately. But then when they got back together, they decided, like, we love food. Let's do something in food. And ice cream seemed like the easy choice for them. But they were friends for 15 years before they ever were business opportunities, right? You're in Ohio. You're in Columbus, right? So not Columbus, but Cincinnati, Ohio, home of Procter and Gamble,
right?
Multi-billion-dollar consumer package company. That was started because Mr. Procter and Mr. Gamble were married to a set of sisters, and their father-in-law was the one that was like, you're always competing for clients. Why don't you just go into business together, right? And the same thing happens. Personal relationships grow out of business relationships. But until we start to see that there are no work friends and real friends, there's just friends, we're actually limiting ourselves from a lot of opportunities that we could uncover.
That's a good point. One of the things I talk about from time to time on the podcast, and certainly with guests, is, and people forget this. Well, they don't forget it, but they don't really think about it. But we have one brain, and the brain, there's not a separate part for professional life and personal life. It's one brain, and it sees betrayal the same way it does personally as professionally. Now, certainly personally, it can be more intense because of romance and all that stuff, but it knows know, like, and trust. In personal, it's all the same. And so when we do have, people at work, they're professional. We're professionally connected, but we kind of have that same affinity that, okay, I really like this person or I don't like this person.
Yeah. And you uncover a whole lot about people. You actually end up moving people into the I like this person zone better when you uncover more things about them than just their work, right? Like I encourage most people, if you're meeting someone in a business context, not to ask, what do you do? Because you'll get to it. Like you're here, you're at a conference together, you're at a networking event together, you'll talk about work. Make sure you're asking about other questions, hobbies, habits, background, etc. Humans are multifaceted. And when you are multifacinated with them, really good things happen. Yeah.
As you were talking, I was thinking of the story of how George Washington met Betsy Ross. I mean, they were They went to church together.
Yeah.
Back in the day when you just, you had your own pew, right? And these pews happened to be next to each other, and they got to know each other. Well, actually, Betsy Ross, she was a Quaker, so she had kind of converted over to that church and was written out of the Quaker religion. But same sort of a thing. I guess they were friends. Well, I don't know if there was any money that exchanged hands, but just, same sort of a thing. They became work friends after they were real friends. And the third thing you talked about was connect. And this I think is probably the most powerful that people really need to kind of get their head around, is connect through friends of friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we get stuck. We get stuck. I don't know anybody. You do.
Yep. Well, and not only that, like the subtitle of the book, I talk about uncover the hidden network, and it's hidden from you. It's not hidden anywhere else. It's hidden from you because you think about the people the 24 people you're really close with, and then you think you've tapped out your network. So forgetting dormant ties, that's a part of it. So you've hidden that from yourself.
Right.
But then you said earlier, you only have one brain. Totally true. There's also only one network. It's 7.7 billion people strong, right?
Yep.
And you're somewhere in it. It's not your network, right? It's the network that you're a part of. And so when you think about that, and by the way, that network really is connected by 5 to 6 introductions. Kevin Bacon is not the center of that network. So it's not 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's 6 degrees of everybody. Now, I'm not interested in getting through and trying to meet somebody that's 5 handshakes away. I'm just interested in the math. If there are 7.7 billion people connected by 5 or 6 introductions, there are tens of millions of people connected by 1. So I can say pretty confidently that almost any opportunity you need to unlock, information you need to find, person you need to connect with is probably just 1 degree of separation out. But I will say, even the people that know this and see the numbers on this and the science on this, they still tend to do it wrong, in the sense that this is where LinkedIn stalking comes from, right? We identify, I want to go work at Google. So we search for people who work at Google, and then we go, Frank knows somebody at Google. I'll go beg Frank for an introduction. Well, Frank may not want to. I might be like that friend that only contacts him every 5 years. Frank doesn't want to give me that introduction, right? So I think it's much better, and this is actually in network science, this is referred to as the problem of search in social network. How do you find the person that you want to get connected to? And the best strategy, that using different AI and computer algorithms, we've been testing this, the best strategy is an open one, is just to say, to go down as many roads as you can as possible. Now, I'm not a computer algorithm, so I can't do all of that, but what I can do is ask my existing friends a question like, who do you know in blank? With blank being that industry, that sector, et cetera, which gives me multiple names most of the time, and usually gives me names that people are comfortable referring me to, rather than just me going and finding one singular person, putting all my hopes on it, and then being shocked because Frank doesn't want to make that introduction, because every introduction is also a recommendation, and maybe I haven't earned that recommendation yet.
Right. My strategy, and it seems to work, is in franchising AmSpirit Business Connections. I just try and meet people, try and share the story and what I'm looking for. I'm never pushy about it. And I just let it lie out there. And sometimes it takes a while for it to incubate. Sometimes people right away say, hey, I know somebody. But the more people I talk to, the greater the likelihood that that's going to kind of be moved on.
Yeah.
And there's got to be an element of patience. The people who come to me and say, I need to make quota by the end of the month, good luck. That's not networking. That's hardcore sales, and that's totally different.
And that's relying on a numbers game of just churning through people, right? And that's a problem. And you probably do this without thinking about it as well, is you probably are giving that other person you're talking to a really clear description. In your case, because it's not who do you know in blank, like just who do you know that works in a company, but it's who do you know that looks like this, because this is the ideal franchisee, right? Like when I talk with sales groups, I always say, don't say, who do you know that wants to buy a car? Nobody wants to buy a car. What happens is people have a new member of the family and need to switch from a sedan to an SUV or whatever. So ask that question, right? Ask it in a way, your blank should be something that gets people a couple months later, they could still sort of identify, this is the type of person that Frank was describing. I should make that connection. And patience becomes a part of that, but it's far more valuable in the long term.
Yeah. The analogy I use with people, because I'll get people calling me saying, hey, I just lost my job. And I tell them, I don't have a Greyhound bus driving around the city with employers. But I ask people, and somewhat rhetorical, But I say, imagine you're a decent golfer, and imagine you're ready to tee off from a 415-yard par 4 dogleg right. When you're about to hit the ball, what's going through your mind? Are you thinking to yourself, geez, I hope I drop it in the cup? Most people will laugh at that, but but I'll kind of go through and I'll say, here's what Tiger Woods wants to do, or any golfer. They want to hit it down the fairway, far enough and straight enough they can see the green on their second shot. Then they want to hit the green, and then 1 or 2 putt it, make par. That's what they're trying to do. And the analogy to networking, I tell people, is this conversation, us talking at a networking event, this is just a shot off the tee. I don't expect that I'm going to call somebody up and they're going to want to buy a franchise, or they're going to want to do business or hire somebody. But we're just playing golf. And it might take 12 shots, right? But no shot takes you further away from where you're going.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, you can make the other one work. You can run to every networking event that you meet 300 people, and one of them just serendipitously is in the right position to buy, and then you go do that again tomorrow. But God, that's brutal. Who wants to live like that?
Well, and people give that advice, but I think what ends up happening, David, is they forget the 99 times that they had their hat handed to them.
And they forget that those 99 people remember what you were like. Yeah. And now you're cutting yourself off from going through friend of a friend connections instead of building new ones.
Yeah. Let's change the conversation here. Let's talk about you. I've got an audience here listening. How can they help you? What would be I would say a good referral or a good introduction? What are you looking to do to build your world?
Yeah, I mean, really, I'm trying to get the message of this. I don't want to call it a better way because that sounds super narcissistic, but an evidence-based way to build out your network. I'm trying to spread that word far and wide. And so, I mean, we deliberately chose friend of a friend for that reason we talked about, that there are no work colleagues and friends. It's all just friends.
Right.
The other is we're really hoping to anchor on people's mind that when they hear that term friend of a friend, it creates that sort of word of mouth. So anything anybody can do to help spread the word. I mean, obviously, it'd be great if you buy a copy of the book, but I care about the message more than the book. So anything you can do to help spread the word on that is hugely appreciated.
Okay, great. What's the best way for people to contact you?
However they choose.
Okay.
What I always tell people is if you go to davidburkus.com, BURKUS.com, scroll all the way down to the bottom, or I think it's also in the top right corner. There's whatever social media icon you want to chat with. Everything other than TikTok, I'm too old for that.
Okay.
But wherever else is where you prefer, we post content there. We respond to messages there. Even old school social networks like email, we have that, and we still reply.
Well, I will put davidburkus.com in the show notes so they can. I do the same thing. It's just much easier to change one location with whatever. So when you get new school and you decide to put TikTok on there, then you're all set.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what it is. I'm that old.
It's like Twitter for little videos. They're like 15 seconds or something. But somehow music is involved every time.
Yeah.
I don't really understand it. That's when I officially knew I was getting old, right? My kids are actually pretty young. I'm still pretty young. But as soon as there's a social network and someone explains it to you and you don't want an account, then you're like, all right, I'm officially old.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, David, I appreciate your time today. This has been great. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connections. All rights reserved.